toys, a watch, a phone, if you're having to bring a tablet, if you can make sure it's not going to ring in the middle of talking, really appreciate it. The books are for sale at the counter. The trick of the evening is always getting Katy from here to where she's going to be signing. Conveniently, that is where the book's available. So if you can make sure you're going that way too, then Katy will be able to sit down and sign and be ready to go, so you can save your compliments and congratulations and accolades to when she's over there and signing in the line. I think, like I've kind of said, Sonoma events are one of my favorite things to do, because in many communities you have local authors and people don't always show up for them. I hear stories from different bookstores, and I think about it and I go, hey, we do great on local events because we have a great community who take care of themselves and they take care of each other. And specifically in the case of Katy, they want to learn about conflict and communication, which is a beautiful thing to learn as a community. You don't have any community in the world without there being some friction, and you have to learn how to deal with it. And like Katy said, having a hairball, you want to get rid of it. You want to cough it up. You want to clear the communication out. Now, obviously, Katy's a licensed marriage and family counselor. She knows a hell of a lot more than I do about this. So, without further ado, if you can welcome Katy here.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you to everybody. Oh my God, this is huge tonight. I'm used to being in a private space looking at other people. So anyway, I'm nervous, scared. Don't anybody be mean to me. All right, so I brought something to demonstrate the hairball. If you don't know what it is, for those of you who haven't been trained by me, it's just something that the cat does to get rid of what's stuck in his or her throat. And cats have a lot of hairballs lately. Have you noticed? So, you know, my writing started just writing and journal writing and getting out my hairball. And so I brought a few for some of you who may need one to take home, just to remind you to get them out when things start to bother you. You know, just hold this, keep this close by. I'll have some later for other people. I don't know if I can get it over your neck. Okay, there we go. So there's Hairball's gifts. So, here we are, 9/11, September 11th. I didn't plan to have this happen on that date, but when I talked to Readers Books, they said it was available. And when I got off the phone, I went, oh my God, 9/11, and I'm talking about conflict. So, I want to try to summarize. Some of you know I've been really worried because I have a lot to say, and I really want to say it today. It's a legacy for me to write this book. So, here's how I see it. We all have a round ball above our necks, right? And that it's a powerful machine. The round ball above our necks, it reacts with fight or flight, as the terrorists must have done. The stories in our head must have been stories in their heads. Whatever their stories were about why they did what they did is why it occurred. Beliefs, powerful. Fears, unmet needs, longings, a need to protect or belong, all things that cause us to react and fight. The amygdala brain cuts off feeling when we're afraid. So that ball up there is a busy thing, and it can be destructive. It cuts off empathy when afraid. On 9/11, 2,830 people were killed, dying terrifying, defenseless deaths, calling wives and kids saying, "I love you," before they burned to death, smothered, or jumped out of windows, as we all remember, to their deaths. Here's the question. How do we still have so much conflict in our world? And what can be done about it? I'm going to first give you a very brief, we're done at 7 tonight, so this is going to be as brief as I can do. Overview of my book. So I've been a therapist for over 40 years, and my work began with clients, for years, just being a therapist, doing the best I could to hear people and help them work through things. But then the book took on an obsession for me, because as I get older, this is like really, really important for me. What does repair broken, ruptured relationships? Most of us have them. We've all been through the vaccines and political discord, even in our personal lives. So I had to also look at my own losses and repairs, what I had learned from inner and outer conflicts and how to resolve them. Then deep dive into research, because I just couldn't believe what I was learning. Why? Why is there still this tendency in the human being to rupture, destroy, divorce, cut off, shun? It goes on and on. So we have deep, ongoing, historic, and continuing conflict. We know it, all of us sitting here, both politically and personally. So what I found is it's not just the sociopaths. In our conversations, we like to say, well, that guy or that person is the problem. But no, not in the research. People follow sociopaths and, punishing leaders. Why is that? Too much for tonight, but I'll give you a snippet. Timothy Horner found very powerful work on this. He interviewed people who had committed genocide and slaughtered and murdered and tortured others to find out what they were feeling and still believing about why they had done such acts. And they said, well, we were told it was a sin not to, or it's what we were told. In the end, he said, the tragic flaw in humanity is social bonding. We want to belong to the extent that we do what we are told. Another person I want to mention early on, just in case any of you want to study any of this, a man named Brian Klaas, Klaas, did a very interesting study on why we or some people follow destructive dictators. And the short story is, it's an anthropological learning. It's actually in our brains and in our DNA, that when we were cavemen, we needed the big, strong prowess to protect our tribe. It's still in us. So that is my brief summary of why we're in some of the problems we're in. And so some of my personal stories in the book are from such things as the 08-09 foreclosure years, during which I had to communicate with Chase Bank through conflict for 2 years. I finally got my house back after living through terrible, terrible agony. But I want to say that almost 900,000 people lost their homes in '08. 1 in every 54 households. These are very big, huge problems. And my story, if I can tell it to you, I will. There's not time for it tonight. How that ended up was really poignant. I write in the book about my eating disorder, how I lost 100 pounds by talking to the different parts of myself. I believe we are each a kaleidoscope, and there are different parts to the prism. So I had to talk to my inner child who was eating because she was hungry for love. And then I had to talk to my inner rebel because she didn't want to lose weight just because she was a woman in a feminist body. Then I had the part that, which part? Oh, the critic was saying, you shouldn't have that donut. And I said, well, screw you, I'm having it. Anyway, so it was a work, it was a job. It goes on. I can see it's going to take me too long to tell you all of it. Many family friendships, losses, and gains. Physical ailments cured because the doctors told me I would never walk again. They told me that I would have a permanently damaged sex life. Better stories for later. And bottom line, those were all cured through community conversations. Word of mouth, people giving me information. Done. So then I want to talk about my work as a therapist and what it's been like, because one of the things that completely blows my mind is when you've watched people go through repair in your office for 40 years, it's so moving and it's so profound to watch it, especially to watch it and then to turn on the news at the end of the day and see it going on all over the world. It just made me crazy because I wanted to see, how could I see that the repair in my office could be duplicated out there? So what I see in my office, I'll give you one glimmer because it's too much, it'll all take too much time. But basically, when you see a father who hasn't spoken to his daughter for 5 years, and he is over 70 years old, and they start telling the truth, and the daughter is scared to be honest, but because I create a safe place for these conversations, it came out that she had experienced him as a bully and had felt insecure and beat up emotionally by him. He was shocked because in his story, in his head, he had done everything he thought was helpful to her, giving her advice, telling her what to do about things, asking her questions, etc. But that's not how she experienced him. He sobbed. She cried and said, oh, thank God, thank you, we are here. This is just a snippet. Basically, if you forget everything else I say tonight, remember a couple things. The profound importance of respectful communication and radical reaching out. That means that when you are scared to bring up something difficult, when you feel a tension in a relationship, when you feel estranged from someone, I'm going to challenge you at the end of the evening, not to do it tonight, of course, but to think about addressing that person and seeing if you can repair that hole in our community. Because how I see these estranged, intense relationships is it creates a hole in the community. It pokes a hole in the fabric of our togetherness and starts building stories that our judgments and eventually create, I believe, less closeness. So, the essence of it is valuing communication. We need a new paradigm. We need to value communication. Oh boy. So, what repairs people? Well, I've been asking for the last 10 years, what helped? What worked? Because I kind of think, oh yeah, I've got all these interventions. I have ideas I've been studying for all this time. But what really worked? I mean, even tonight working with a pair, and they're like, we're fine, we're good. I'm like, really, what worked? And his response was listening and reflecting back what I heard. Because when I slowed down, instead of jumping in and saying, well, I think this, I don't agree with that, but here's what I'm thinking. But I say, what I hear you saying is, I hurt your feelings, and that goes back many, many years of being hurt that same way in your childhood. Then she feels heard. And he said, why did I not know this in 30 years of marriage? And what I said to him is, how would you have learned it? The movies? In school? Let's see. On the radio, maybe a YouTube on happiness. How to be happy. You know, there aren't places to learn this. So if somebody wants to make a film about my book, that's what I think needs to happen. We need to be able to see what I see in my office, to see it so we know what it looks like. Because people in my practice say, you want me to have a feeling? Sometimes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you feel anything? I don't know. I mean, I feel bewildered. That's a feeling, his wife will say. So it's a learning. What I create, the reason that there are breakthroughs is I create a scaffolding for safety and a simple way, I'll show you in a minute, to help people talk to each other in safety. And I'll give it to you to take home so you don't have to pay me if you don't want to, although take the big bucks. All right. So, in essence, people want to be seen and heard. People want to be seen and heard. What percentage of people do you think remember what they've heard in conversations? Anybody have a guess?
10%.
10%. 20.
Yeah, no further.
Anybody else have a guess? Yeah.
5%.
You got it.
Oh.
We got an academia in here. 5% of people, 5% memory. So if you and I have a conversation tonight, I will remember 5. I think you're going to remember 10.
Go on.
Ah, I can tell.
She likes.
Yeah. So,
Magic people.
as David Brooks said, the journalist I like a lot, when let's see here, let me find it. When another person is talking, you want to be listening so actively that you're burning calories. Yeah, that worked for me. So, anyway, the work I do is really kind of shocking. And at the end of the day, the real question is, how do you parallel this process so that it happens out there in the world? And again, not time to get into it, but just so you know, there are people doing major work all over internationally to bring dialogue to large organizations and to in between countries in conflict. And you'll find that work under Peter Coleman, Coleman, Bridging Divides. It's quite impressive. They've got 500 people now working in this regard with other organizations. So back to my personal work. When I'm working with people who are triggered, which none of us have ever been, right? all it takes is somebody getting in your line in the grocery store, right? Or being on the bumper of your car when you're trying to get home at night. Like, "Rawr, rawr." So there are things, little words I've learned over the years to use for people to kind of give them an image, because I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, so that they can remember when they're stressed. So one of the things I say to people is when you're triggered, you're either going to do fight or flight. If you're doing flight, I call it the ostrich thing. So you're trying to pull away, you don't want to rock the boat, you're just being quiet, you're shutting down, but everybody can see that you're there, like an ostrich, you know, it's there, even with the head down, right? So, hello, you feel the tension. You know there's something not being said. There's also the court of law. I call it the court of law because it's a conversation in which I use you statements. You were supposed to be here at 4:15 and you got here at 5. Is that not correct, John? No, that is not correct. I was there at 4:22. I even looked at my watch. No, you weren't. I looked at my cell phone, which is more accurate than your watch. Anyway, the point is, this I see a lot in families and with couples, and that is what we've been taught. It's nobody's fault. This is the way we're embedded in war, in our culture, and probably maybe worldwide now, which is that debate is a conversation. The problem with that is it doesn't create any connection. So what I tell the clients is intimacy is into me, you see. That is when I share it with an I statement, not a you statement, an I statement, what I'm feeling, what I need, and at least that person can usually hear a little bit of that. The other thing I see is that these circular arguments and the defenses that we have are a lot like out there. The defenses, what do we have all the time? We know what we have in the news. We have defenses. We have national defenses. We have armor. We have fighting. We have school shootings. We have this and that, fighting, defensive shields. Everybody's got a wall up. We've got fences. We've got houses with high walls and big gated locks. We have a lot of armor. What we don't have is an ability or any learning about how to soften the walls, how to get down there. I call it going down the ladder, because clients don't know what I mean, and I'll say, well, I hear you that you feel better now that she's complimented you on your dress, but why is that so important? Why does it have so much meaning to you? Can we go down one more rung on the ladder? Well, because I grew up with a family of 10 kids and nobody noticed me. So when she says, that was beautiful what you did, he's 5 years old again at some level, like, whoa, I'm getting acknowledged. There's much more to the theory behind this, but that's the dropping of walls that happens in therapy, in good quality therapy. You can't have democracy without mental health. Clients ask over and over again, what hardened us? Why did we kind of start living these parallel lives? Why did the kids not talk to the parents? Why can't we get along even though we have different views on politics or vaccines or whatever? Well, we're hardened. There's a lot of fear in us, fight or flight. And the fear is a taboo. We do not have fear in this culture. We are not supposed to have fear. There's a great book called The Tyranny of Positivity by Susan Cain, in which she says something like, you know, if you have to cry in the workplace, for God's sake, go into the bathroom if you have to do it. We have a culture where we're not supposed to be afraid. So we don't talk about that. I can tell you right now, and this was at the bottom of the research on genocide, the man I quoted earlier said, if you do nothing else after this lecture on genocide, when you are angry, ask yourself the question, what am I afraid of? So, my cat had it right. We need to get out our hairballs, show face, and I'll explain that in a minute. And when my client calls my he calls my scaffolding, when I show people how to speak to each other better, he calls it rules for war, which I thought was so darling and so right. So unless you're doing harm to self or others, get the hairball out. Let me show you, because I think, again, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and this is simple. It looks kind of childlike, but you want to pass that around because people, this is really useful. So here's the picture I show people. When you're anxious and you're in a conflict, it's real simple. It's in your face to save face. That's it. And you're looking at somebody's face, right? So you can remember. So two things clearly: the ears for listening. The first eye, the first eyeball stands for intention. If you're going to have a gutsy or crucial or delicate conversation, start with your intention. I want our friendship to be closer. I want us to have fun on the holidays this year. I just want to talk about some things because I love you so much and I'm feeling some tension. You start with your intent. That lowers the temperature. It lowers the layer of anger, defensiveness. Then you have I statement. The next I statement is only I statements, because when you do I instead of you, you're reflecting on yourself. You're not telling them what they need to do, which is what we all really know really well what other people need to do, right? So the I statement is I'm hurt or I'm afraid. It's anger goes in from the mouth. The mouth is where you blow wishes off a birthday cake. And when you're angry, the thing to do with that is to say what you need. Anger is unmet needs. So that's where you direct your anger. I need or I wish that is even softer. I wish that we could have dinner at 6 when we agreed because I'm starving to death. Or whatever the issue is. So that's simple. There's lots more to it, but I have just about 3 or 4 or 5 more minutes. Lastly, I want to read from my book. This is very personal and kind of hard to do, but that's what tonight is supposed to be. I'm supposed to do a reading. So this is true story, one of them from my life. Of course, my thing fell out, so now I can't find it. Okay, I've got to look in the index. Hold on.
Take your time.
Thank you.
There's no actual timer.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I have a concern about time, especially because I really believe in conversation. I don't believe in podiums. That's the other thing that I talk about in the book, which is architecture. We need benches in front of everything instead of big gates, and we don't need fences, we don't need borders, we don't need barriers everywhere. We need fences. We need benches, not fences. All right, so okay, here we go. This chapter is called Boundaries Are a Substitute for Soul. Let me get one sip of water. Thanks for being so patient. It's hot in here.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes you stop speaking to someone for years, or you pull back. It's an unnecessary loss. Mom and I did not know how to talk through our hidden hurt. Oh, there were the friendly phone calls, the polite and brief conversations, but something was missing. It's not always the things we say to each other that destroy our relationships. It's sometimes the things unsaid that sever them. Words that sit like stale, unspoken resentments or fears reside inside us and between us in the thick space of silences that kill connection. I was afraid to say things I thought might hurt her. I learned in therapy that boundaries were good. So I withdrew from her. As she aged, she got angrier, and I shut down. I was afraid of her outbursts and criticisms. It didn't occur to me to tell her that. I thought, you can't change people. Don't rock the boat. I don't want to hurt her or fight. Pick your battles. While it may seem true that we can't change others, we can be brave ourselves and attempt repair and closure. But my trips to her from San Francisco to Seattle ended in a hurry. After one of those visits, she killed herself. We hid our judgments of each other, grimacing inside ourselves about each other's edgy, difficult characteristics. When we're afraid of telling the truth, we focus on the faults of others. She was controlling, pushing me to think the same way she did. We were too much alike. I was moody and hard to understand. We were so much alike, like mothers and daughters often are. The world fell in along with it, and along with it, contrasting, strange, and burdensome tasks of packing her things. Engulfed with selling, signing documents, and in shock, I was horrified with my first experience at a funeral parlor. The staff were white-faced. They walked toward me down a long gray corridor like slithery, dusty ghosts. I remember wondering if the continual cremations in the basement, the fire-burning furnaces, had left residue sunken into them. I really did wonder that. It was surreal and lonely beyond anyone's ability to describe, unless you've gone through it. Standing there shattered, in an altered state, in unbearable sorrow, alongside these contrasting, robot-like, bony humans. It might seem like an odd insert here, but this writing is suddenly too hard. My mind darts around, boggled, looking for ways to tell you what it was like. I'm feeling inadequate for what this story wants me to convey. What I would give to have been brave enough to talk to her about unspoken feelings before she died. We think we have forever for this, but we don't. Closure is a gift we give ourselves, but it takes guts. If only I had the courage to say, Mom, I want to feel closer to you. Or I get afraid around your rage. Instead, I withdrew. I became devoid of feeling, devouring cookies. Never taught to ask for what we want, walls and isolation remain a result. Boundaries are a substitute for soul. spaces separating our deep selves and longings. 6:30, I did it. It's your turn.
Some light reading.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody's gonna chime in, but I've got something.
Go for it, Mr. Klein.
Okay. First of all, Taylor Swift has no. You were way. She wasn't even born when you were talking about, hairballs. So, the childless cat lady thing. You are way in front of everybody.
Oh, gee.
Let me just try.
Can you hear her back? Hear Steve back there?
Yeah.
Okay, you gotta stand up and say, they can't hear you back.
Oh, well, okay, Katy's got the childless cat lady thing, in her ballpark long before Taylor Swift. Okay? Okay.
Don't take the whole evening.
I've got one more time.
Oh, you got another minute.
No, I'm actually gonna, bore you with a little bit of. She had the opportunity to meet a wonderful gentleman that I've gotten to know through my business as in Japan, Haru. She was at a dinner here in town when the whole business team from Japan came. I got a book to Haru, and he is Japanese born, lives in America, and his English is getting much better. And here's what I wanted to, he texted me this. Ignore the first paragraph. I started reading Katy's book. Sorry it took time for me to get to read in the reading habit, but I'm doing it. It takes time to read and understand, as I still have a lot of English words I don't know. But I love the book.
Aww.
It teaches me a lot of important thoughts in regard to relationships with my important people around me.
Thank you.
Nice.
And to me, that makes me see Katy's book as
Universal.
it's like the Police song, "Message in a Bottle."
All right, thank you.
Hey, lovely. He's my last husband.
Yeah,
Most of us know that. So you must have questions and maybe you're afraid to ask them, or do you want me to say more? I have more notes. Or do you have comments?
Do you mostly work with couples?
I work with families, groups, and couples, and the families are really interesting. It's such, I'm definitely never bored. There's a lot going on. Oh, yeah. Richard,
I did have a question.
you have to be louder.
Okay, so when you're talking about the I statements, that took me a long time to get. Maybe it's because I'm from New York, but
That'll do it.
So can you explain a little bit more about, like Larry David would say, like there was this one bit on his show where he said, his wife says, Larry, you really shouldn't judge me. And she goes, I think I should. So the point being, like, how do you balance that I statement with also getting your, like you said, your intention that this is, maybe you could expound on that just a bit.
Yeah, it's a great question because it seems a little, I had to go through it a lot with myself. The question was about the I statements, and I had to wonder about it a lot because people do say we get together, we like this and we like that, and that's fine when you're very close and you're getting along. But in conflict especially, the I is very important. What I saw in my work, I see it, it's palpable. When a person shifts from we or you to I, everything melts. Because you have to be about yourself. You have to reflect on, I feel something, and that's one of the answers. I think the other thing I want to mention about that is I had to question it because we know we live in a very self-oriented culture, very individualistic. So the I statement sort of seems like, oh, is this more about me? And actually it turns out it's not. It's about I and you and I. The image I use a lot is the salsa or the cha-cha. When you dance and it works well, and we know when it works well and we know when it doesn't, right? It's because I'm on my 2 feet with my I, and I'm in sync with you. I'm also paying close attention to your rhythm. And it can't be one or the other. If I'm just doing you, I'm like, whoa, there ain't nobody there. It's no dance. I mean, you might be able to get some dance going if you're an authority figure, but you know what I mean. So it's very important, and it's also that the I is the eye of the soul. And it's very important. It's seeing into me. Here's how I feel when you say that. It might not be even relevant. It might even be a projection or a distortion, but that's how it comes across to me.
And I can attest she's a great dancer.
Who else? Jill.
Yes, I have a difficult relationship with my sister, and I've had for years. I have had for years. She runs hot and cold, and even though I make attempts to, not right now, we're not speaking, according to her. For 2
Can
years.
people hear you?
Yeah. And
So Jill's having trouble with her sister and they're not speaking right now.
right, and it's not on my part. I mean, I tried to communicate on holidays and just in general, and I get no response whatsoever. How can I make that relationship work, or how can I communicate whatever I need to get from her?
Are you saying your positive goal and intention, which is something loving?
Yes, yes.
You are.
She was okay for a couple of years, and then boom, she cuts it off. And that's happened since our mother passed away in 2010. 6 months, and then 5 years, nothing. And then 2 years communication, and then nothing. It's like she's uncomfortable for some reason being around me and my daughter and the grandchildren and everything. I don't know what's wrong with her.
So are you willing to do radical reaching out, which means that you would be the person in this relationship who will always have to extend yourself to the communication? She may have the ostrich thing so deeply embedded in her, so the fear or flight, she may have the flight so deeply embedded for whatever childhood or
Yeah.
historic reasons. So you may have to do the reaching out. Are you listening very deeply, burning calories while you listen to her?
I believe I am.
You do?
Yeah, I believe I am. The last time we spoke, she called me up and, as is the case, asked me for money. I said no, because my mother trained her so that whenever she needed something, she would abuse my mother and my mother would give her money. But I don't want to be treated that way.
Okay, let me jump there. So that's a pretty familiar scenario in my work. So you've already said, what I'm hearing you say is that she calls you and asks you for money, and you
If she
say
can't get it
no.
from anybody else, yeah.
And because you believe that that's your story in your head is she thinks she can just borrow it anytime she needs.
Exactly.
And you have a judgment about that.
It's been her practice, it's been,
Well, you know a lot about her problem.
yes.
Right, we all do. We all know that other person's issue, right? That's just the way it is. So you know that she has a problem.
Yes,
Okay. So have you shared with her the I about what it feels like for me? If you don't have a no is a wall. Unless you are experiencing harm to self or others, then you have to say no. Otherwise, you need to say, here's what I'm feeling when you ask me for money. And I'd like to talk about it because I feel estranged from you.
oh, that's a good one.
I get scared because I have a story in my head that you're going to keep asking. And I don't have that much, or whatever your truth is.
Yes, yes.
And then you take a deep breath and say, can we talk about this? How does that sit?
That sounds good,
It's hard work. You will sweat,
yes. Yes.
as we all are right now. And there's more I could say on that, but I want to make sure if there's anything else people want to ask, or thank you for, it's pretty hard in a group to be so open. Thank you.
Even if you gave her the money, she wouldn't talk to you again.
I'm sure, and I.
It doesn't matter that you said no.
Exactly, and I told her, get a job that pays more than $18 an hour, and or, save more, or, she blew her retirement savings, and she's not even retired yet. Everything's gone.
That's my dream.
Yeah.
Let me jump in. No, I don't want to interrupt too much because it's actually a really important conversation and one we all relate to. What you were doing there, and I didn't get to it in my talk because I couldn't do it all, is you're giving her advice.
Yes.
How many of us love to get advice? Carol will. When I give Steve advice, I say, can I give you advice?
It doesn't mean I listen to it, but yes.
So it's okay to give advice, and if you want to ask first, make your intention clear. I'd like to be helpful and I have advice. And, I do not recommend questions because that is the court of law. What happened to your last $500 that you called me about? If I ask you, why did you arrive 3 minutes early tonight? You're going to be defensive, right? Questions are, I don't recommend them a lot. I recommend I statements. The other thing is advice. It makes people stiffen, like, well, I know I've been on a diet. I know I need to, whatever do we get advice about, right? I should walk every day. I should be a jogger. I should, read more. And it's okay, but it's not bringing closeness. The closeness comes from curiosity and creating safety with an I statement, like I'm just kind of wondering how I might be helpful. And I'm wondering about what goes on with the money. And I want the intention. I want us to be closer. I know you're pulling away from me. I want to understand what I do. I want feedback. Is there something I do that makes you pull away? But advice is, I do it after a couple of drinks when I try to ask people, can I give you advice? And I want to do it. But I'm talking about how to get closer to people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jill. That's hard to do. And I think the conversation, I don't know if I should have interrupted you or not. Susan,
I just have a comment,
you have to be loud.
and I have an I statement.
Okay.
Can you just tell your sister that I am not a bank?
Oh,
No.
Bank of Mom and Bank of Jill.
She's fired.
No.
It's probably, well, yeah, it's the intention behind that might be worthy of checking out. That was good, Susan. Grace.
Well, I would have a question, is the money the real issue?
That's
Or is
right.
that just a substitute for something else that's going on?
That's right. That's right.
She doesn't handle money well.
Yeah, but Reese is made, that, no, that's a good point though. I mean, none of us handle everything really well, right? So everybody in this room's got something. You know, I know for me, it's donuts, or it's, you know, when I've had 2 drinks and I say the wrong thing. I know I have things trying to figure out what to do with my hair. No, that's just, but you know, we all have our thing, but my point being, where were we? What was the question? I'm trying too hard, forgot.
Is it about money?
Oh, is it about money? Thanks, Reese, that was excellent. So it's almost never about the thing that people are arguing about, yeah. Thank you for that, because I didn't get that in, and that's really important. Conflict is almost never about the thing we're fighting about. So I didn't name the countries like Rwanda and Nazi Germany and Bosnia and Cambodia, and they go on. And if you'd like to name more of them, please do. But we know slavery, the Indians, slaughter of the Indians. So we have both politically and throughout the globe and personally, we all know conflict, right? And it could be the neighbor, it could be the grocery clerk, it could be, and then you get a story in your head. That person doesn't like me. I notice they're really cold whenever I say hello. You know, if you ever risk checking that out with them, my experience is about 90% of the time you're like, really? You thought I was cold? I was just like, you know, distracted because my day at my job was so tough. So if I had not asked that person, I'd be having a story in my head. Well, I just won't say hello to that person. But to your point, Reese, it's never usually about, that's why we have to go down the ladder to, that was the one thing that reminds me to say that I want to just add here, which is when I work with this thing, to help people remember when they're scared in conflict, the brain shuts down so you forget whatever. Everything I've told you tonight, you'll forget, because this guy has 10%, but most of us will remember 5, right? So here are some of the elements of this. Curiosity, it's harder to do than it sounds, right? I'm curious. Why the money thing? What goes on, do you think? What do you think is going on? I don't want to judge you about it. I want to be a safe place for you to explore this. Sounds like you've got a ways to go to become a safe place. But then you have to slow down the conversation. My clients tell me the slowing down is huge. If I just put up my hand real gently and say, hold on. Because people want to jump in. That's not how I feel. Don't say that's how I'm feeling. That's not what I'm feeling. That's not what I said. And so you have to slow it down. Just reflect back. What I hear you saying is you think, I didn't bring home the groceries because I was with another woman. Is that what you're telling me? So anyway, I'm trying to be funny because I know you're getting tired and hot. But, so slowing it down though is really important. Fewer questions, no advice, reflecting what you hear people saying. The mouth is for anger, and that is for asking. Anger and asking are the same. Asking what I wish for. Going down the ladder, and that's it. That's my nickel. Does anybody have a last comment or question? Allison.
I just want to have a clearer idea between curiosity but not asking questions. I'm sure there's a more nuanced version of that would clarify.
You know, I'd have to think about it, but it's a good question. Thank you. I think that when I hear your question,
Not accusatory questions.
Maybe there's a difference between curious questions and other kind of questions.
So the question was, is there a difference? There are 2 questions here. One is there a difference between curious questions and regular questions? And there is, but I would say in a conflict, stay with the I statements and say, I want, I need, I want, I need. I need, I feel hurt, I feel afraid to bring this up, but I really want to understand why this keeps happening. So the question is, curiosity is an intention. I can't give you, I don't think at the moment, I may be forgetting something, but there's not a formula for curiosity, but it's an intention. And if you bring nothing else to a conversation that's difficult but curiosity, because you really want to understand where they're coming from, believe me, that is like lifting weights at the gym when you're out of shape. It's very difficult to be curious when you're angry or you're defensive or you're in a conflict. It's the last thing that we want to do. It's not habituated in us. We are habituated to war. We are in bed with war. We are in bed with debate. This is what we learn. It's all we've learned. Oh, I forgot my main point. So, my takeaway is conflict resolution needs to be taught in the schools from age 3 on up. It needs to be taught in the schools from age 3 on up, and more so than even that. We need to help children understand, and everybody, the roots of rage. There's a great book called Raised to Rage by Byrne and Conrad. There's a lot of writing on this. Rage, it comes from a very deep feeling of being wounded in the past. Sometimes it comes from fear. Rage comes from a lot of places. And children need to understand their anger. Where is this coming from? It's not just injustice, which is what we perceive when we watch the news, but these people are feeling wounded by each other. And they need to sit at the table. Negotiation, not war. Negotiation, not war. Hope that helped you. Thank you.